Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our attendees joining us today for this latest Data Science Central webinar. This is Bill Vorhies, your host. I'm the Editorial Director with Data Science Central and also Chief Data Scientist for Data Magnum. I'd like to start off our event today by thanking Qlik for sponsoring today's event. Qlik's an integral supporter of the Data Science Central community, and we're honored to have them sponsoring our event today. I'd also like to take this opportunity to mention and show our appreciation for some of our other recent sponsors, including DataRobot, IBM, Alteryx, Tibco, Databricks, and Vertica, to name just a few. Now, past webinars are available on demand at datasciencecentral.com, and if you haven't had the opportunity to view them, I encourage you to take a look. They provide some very useful insight into a wide variety of topics of interest to our data science community. Now, today's webinar is entitled Maximize the Value of Your IoT Data. That'll be presented by Qlik. And before we begin, I'd like to briefly review the format of today's webinar. Today's webinar will be an hour long. We have two presenters that I'll introduce in just a minute. There'll be 10 or 15 minutes of QA following the presentation, and this event is being recorded and will be available on datasciencecentral.com later this afternoon following today's live event. Now, I'd also like to encourage our attendees to provide questions throughout the presentation. So we'll be reviewing and presenting them on your behalf during the QA portion of today's event. Well, I'm very pleased to introduce today's speakers, Adam Mayer and John Toot. Adam is Technical Product Marketing Manager at Qlik, and among other things, he's responsible for delivering the company's Internet of Things go-to-market strategy. With a strong technical background in computing, underpinned by an incisive engineering perspective, Adam's an avid follower of new technology and holds a deep fascination for all things IoT, particularly on the data analytics side, and finding new ways to make it translatable, visual, and understandable to as many people as possible. Adam has over 20 years of B2B customer-facing experience in IT and the automotive sectors, having previously held positions at Canon, Sony, TiVo, Fujitsu, and Toshiba. Now, John is a solution architect at Qlik and has over 8 years of experience in the business intelligence space, helping companies collect and analyze their data to make strong, well-informed business decisions based on facts and information rather than their gut instincts. His expertise includes business intelligence, data integration, dashboard design and development, data architecture design, analytics, requirement gathering, video game industry knowledge, SQL, QlikView, QlikSense, and Pentaho. So Adam, John, thanks for being with us today. We're looking forward to your presentation. The digital universe is expanding, not just the data collected, but also the devices that generate the data. It's estimated that there'll be over 20 connected devices per person on the planet by 2020, and anything from 50 to 200 billion total IoT devices. That's a lot of data being generated from IoT ecosystems. The challenge will be making all that data accessible and understandable to start extracting value from it all. So in this Data Science Central webinar, you'll learn how you can discover more value in your IoT data. Adam, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can begin as soon as you're ready to go.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bill, and hello, everybody. I'm Adam Mayer from Qlik, and I'm delighted to be able to have this opportunity to talk to you about how you can maximize value from your IoT data. First, let me tell you a little bit about Qlik. So we're a software company in the business intelligence space, and we're offering a self-service visual analytic platform that really helps organizations such as yourself to harness the data and gain insights that you can really start making better informed decisions on and ultimately become more data-driven organizations. We were founded in Lund in Sweden back in '93, but now we're headquartered in Radnor in Pennsylvania in America. So we're really a global company, but with a Swedish soul, as we like to say. We have over 40,000 delighted customers now, and I don't use the term delighted too lightly, and we have a very strong partner network of over 1,700 partners, and that's all over 100 countries. And as you can see, we're also enjoying a year-on-year growth revenue stream. Onto the topic itself. First of all, we're experiencing a little bit of a big bang over four main trends in the BI space. We're seeing, as everybody knows, an explosion in data and content, not just internal business data, but also, like our ERP and CRM data, but also external data. And more of that data is being stored and born in the cloud, and even we're starting to see machine-generated data as well now. Luckily, we're seeing also an explosion in computing power. More often than not available on the cloud, and you can start powering up significant resources to deal with all this data and start bringing in some analytical power. I'm almost at a click of a button these days. And we're also seeing an explosion in demand for access of your data, not just internally within your organization and your individuals, but also outside of your organizations, from your partners and customers are starting to demand more information too. And lastly, we're seeing a demand on usage, an explosion of usage, and this is the rise of what we like to call the information activism. This is where people, pretty much like yourselves on the call, the business analysts and data scientists, can start to really use all of that data that's out there, take it to insights and start to push it out to the organization. So you can ask questions from your data, get answers, and ask more questions that ultimately come out of that. But we're starting to see this particular trend is growing at a much slower pace than the others. So it's forming a bit of a resource problem in that there simply isn't not enough people like yourselves with the right skills, just not enough information activism out there in organizations to manage the data that's building it up and to the ability to consume it. We're also seeing a bit of a data challenge forming. Starting off with data pollution, with so much data coming out of the exhaust now, we're experiencing data pollution where good data gets polluted with bad data, and to the extent we really don't know what data sets to trust and those not to trust. We're also starting to form a data bias. We're living in a world now where we get filtered information to us based on our sort of our own pre-existing biases. The likes of Google and Facebook have algorithms that start showing us adverts, information, and news based on our own preferences. And while that can be useful to some, it's actually starting to form a bit of a dangerous situation where we're living in our own echo chambers of our own thinking and really not being challenged enough. So that can start leading to data fatigue, and you start looking around in the political landscape. And I come from the UK with the recent Brexit, and also political elections out there over different countries, America, France and UK, all the pollster information. You start to get it wrong, and people are starting to get tired of the data and not trust it. And worse, that starts leading to data ignorance, where increasingly emotion starts taking over the facts and statistics as well as rational thinking. And this is leading to the so-called false news era. Now, last year, we called last year the Year of Information Activism. So this is really the enlightened view of the business analysts and the data scientists, harnessing the data, working with it, bringing it to insights, almost to life, and pushing it out to the organizations. And we saw organizations starting to really recognize the need and the importance of that role of the data scientist. In fact, just in last May, we held our Connections 2017 event. This is a large event we hold every year as a company, and we had over 30,000 attendees, over customers and partners alike using Qlik. And this is where we sort of talk about our product launches. We hold keynotes and lots of in-depth sessions. It's a great place to network and get information. And there's certain panels, there discussions as well. We had some 4 strong customers in one particular panel, such as the likes of IKEA, Virgin Media, Virgin Mobile, sorry, Ford Motors, and Borg Warner, all talking about how they're benefiting from Qlik, how they're using it, but more importantly, the role of the data scientists. In fact, IKEA called them data navigators, which I quite like. And Ford, in fact, mentioned that they're already in the process of building a strong team of 150, no less, data scientists, but they don't want to stop there. They're actually looking to build a total, get this, over the years of 1,500 data scientists. So if you are looking for a new opportunity and you're in the Minnesota area, I think it is, you can check out Ford. But as we said today, the key challenge here is that just simply isn't enough people out there with their right skill sets to fill the demand of these prestigious roles. And this year, we're calling it the year of data literacy. Because when you look back 100 years ago at general literacy, the reading and writing skills, 100 years ago, that wasn't a skill the masses needed to have necessarily when we were very much in a labor-driven economy. But come the Industrial Revolution, the first Industrial Revolution, and that shift towards a more services-driven revolution, then reading and writing skills quickly became those must-have skills essential to survival. And today, we think this is very much the same case when we talk about data and data literacy within organizations. So, it's important to have a data strategy within organizations and to start investing in people across the whole organization to become more data literate. So, setting up business cases and objectives in terms of what problem or business case you're trying to solve or answer. And just collecting data for data's sake and storing it in large data lakes, and hoarding data for no clear purposes has started to prove inefficient in most cases. In fact, Gartner validates this. They say in a recent survey, throughout 2018, just next year, 90% of deployed data lakes will actually be rendered useless because they're overwhelmed with information assets. They've been captured without any clear or certain use cases. So investing in people means that we also need to start investing in data literacy and raising that level of data literacy across the organization. So what exactly do we mean when we talk about data literacy? If I can borrow from a paper that was jointly published by academics at MIT and Emerson University, they say or define it as data literacy includes the ability to read, work with, analyze, and argue with data. So the reading with data part involves understanding what the data is, what aspects of the world that it represents. Working with the data involves that creating, acquiring, cleaning, and managing it. And the analyzing bit, which we're all familiar, certainly within Qlik, involves the filtering, sorting, aggregating, comparing, and those kind of analytic operations. And perhaps the most important piece is the arguing the data, which involves using the data to support a larger narrative intended to communicate some message to a particular audience. Now, there are some that say maybe English is the international language of business, and perhaps now it's time to rethink that maybe data is becoming the international language of business. Perhaps even more so when we start looking towards IoT. Now, IoT devices are obviously going to be generating a lot of data, as we've said, and there will be a lot of devices out there, depending on who you believe, 50 billion up to 200 billion devices by the end of this decade. And that's only a few years to go. So drawing on Cisco's prediction and IDC, who are the ones quoting that up to the 200 billion mark, there's going to be a huge amount of data being generated. The red line, by the way, if you can just about see that, is representing mobile devices. So these are devices like laptops, tablets, and their mobile phones, for example. And these are mainly contributing to human-generated data. And as we can see, pretty much as of last year, we've reached that tipping point already where human-generated data has been overtaken by machine-generated data. And regardless of who you believe, there's going to be more devices than people, but ultimately for us it's not the number of devices or the things that's really the important piece here. It's that data that's going to be generated that's the important bit. And the real challenge will be not just how to collect it and build the infrastructure and IoT ecosystems to contain that, but also really how to surface that data and glean the insights that could drive innovation and really allow IoT to become the enabler that it promises. Who's actually using IoT today? So borrowing from my friends in Forrester, I was on a recent webinar with Forrester, which you can actually see on demand on Qlik.com, but I just took a slide here to show you. They did a survey back in 2016 over 10 countries from established and emerging economies, and they were looking for IoT activity across enterprises and small to medium-sized companies. Their findings overall were that 25% were using machine-to-machine or Internet of Things solutions or applications, and 27% are planning to do that. That's making a total of 52%. When you combine the interested parties of 27%, that makes an overall total of 79% interested using or planning IoT solutions. Now, as you can see, Forrester surveyed a variety of company sizes detailed there at the bottom. Their data source was over 3,000 respondents, and these were made up of businesses and technology decision makers who knew something of the network or telecoms activities within the company. And considering IoT has to communicate in some fashion, Forrester has taken that as a reasonable proxy to find out if there's IoT activity within the company. And then from the results there, we can actually see that actually it's the enterprise companies. So that's defined as those with 1,000 employees or more. Those are the ones that are significantly more likely to report using IoT solutions or applications. So 30% using, 29% planning, 60% after rounding there. And putting it all together in total, that's easily over 85% of the larger companies that are the ones that are interested, using or planning to use the Internet of Things. Now, when you sort of look at the Internet of Things, it has two sides, both a consumer side and a business-to-business or the industrial side of things. So the consumer side is those iWatch, the wearable devices like iWatch, Fitbit, home automation devices you may have, like the thermostat, Nest in America, also quite popular over here, Hive. There's lighting control systems, locking systems now. Amazon have their Echo, Alexa. Google has Home, for example. That's one side of the consumer side of the business, or of IoT, sorry. And then B2B, it starts building up around more industrial side of things. So smart buildings, facilities management, kind of all those things building on the home automation. Connected cars is quite a hot topic. Smart cities is gaining traction. Improving street lights, waste management, traffic monitoring systems, those kind of things. And a lot of industry solutions are covered in there as well, from manufacturing, retail, healthcare, just to name a few there. And these, it's actually the B2B side that's taking the largest share of value, estimated value. McKinsey here estimating the total market worth of the Internet of Things to be over $11 trillion in less than 10 years. There's a huge amount of value estimated to be had out of IoT. And why is it happening now? Why are companies like McKinsey putting so much value on it? If we have a look at this kind of journey that's being taken from data to insight, starting with the sensor side of things, they're becoming much more cost-effective, much smaller and energy efficient, to the point that they can carry on without being recharged for an almost indefinite amount of time. You can put lots of sensors on a product now, and manufacturers of products can start gaining data on a never before seen scale. Couple that with the edge or fog computing, where this is about the computing power becoming miniaturized and then more powerful. You can start putting intelligence and local logic on the device itself, right at the edge of that network. We have this ubiquitous connectivity layer now, Internet Protocol version 6. We have 5G coming along, also known as LTE on the cellular network, low energy Bluetooth, and lots of different protocols and methods of communicating this sensor data across a network. The key thing here is it's the ability to send lots of this sensor data information at minimal latency, which is really important because you don't want any dropouts or misinformation. And the IP version 6-bit, now it's estimated you could put an IP address on every single grain of sand on the Sahara Desert. This means that every device can have its own identity, its own unique identity, which would be really important for building and scaling IoT ecosystems. More often than not, these ecosystems are cloud-based, and cloud is very popular now. Cloud economics is pushing organization investments from one of capital expenditure upfront, a lot of resources, to one of operational expenditure, much more better for the finance organizations, but it also means today you can put a lot of compute power, spin it up in the cloud for more cost-effective and less resources. And all the way into Insight now, we're actually seeing new ways that information is starting to be consumed, from virtual realities like the Oculus Rift, or augmented reality like Google Glass and HoloLens, to name just two there. And really, Pokemon Go is like the catalyst of augmented reality, bringing it together in a new way of consuming information, right up to what you can probably just make out on that picture there of flexible screens. So it's really changing the way that we can consume information as well as being immersed in information, and really starting to gain insight there. Just take a minute to explain Qlik's position in the IoT. Where do we sit in this IoT ecosystem? So if you look at the IoT ecosystem at a very high level, you can break the IoT delivery architecture down into about 4 main layers. So on the bottom left there, you can see the IoT devices. These are the things themselves, of all the sensors collecting and sending data to be stored and processed. There's also an element of edge computing here, so things with some compute power for their local logic execution, for example. Pushing that sensor data through the connectivity layer next, and this is really about the data becoming in motion, and this layer is describing how the IoT devices are connected and which protocols the IoT data is sent through. There's an element of fog computing here as well, if there's gateway switches involved, for example, also bringing compute power and local logic execution closer to that edge. All that data gets pushed into an operationals layer, which is normally centralized, and this is where the role of the IoT platform comes into play. This is to manage, monitor, and maintain the IoT devices that are connected to it. So the realms of information technology and OT, operational technology, started to blend here. And sensor data sent through the connectivity layer is collected, and centralized logic is executed here. So it's kind of data in use now. So this could be enabling actions such as alerts or automation of tasks, for example. There's many different IoT platforms out there. Last count, I read a recent article that said it was over 350 platforms out there. So it's the likes of Microsoft Azure have their own IoT suite on that platform. Amazon, AWS do the same thing. Intel, Cisco, Google. There are so many more out there. The key thing that we're trying to show here is that ultimately, when data comes in at rest, now it could be temporary or permanent, it comes into the analytical layer, and this is where Qlik sits. And our real secret sauce here is the ability to not only connect to multiple disparate data sources, regardless of location, format, or size. It could be Cloudera, Hadoop, SAP HANA, on-premise, in the cloud, or somewhere in between. We already say that we're kind of, to us, data is just a source, and we're data agnostic. We can also connect into IoT platforms and pull the data out, push data back in as necessary, and connect to other machine learning and decision engines, and such as R and Python, for example, for a really open API set. So there's flexibility and extendability there as well. And the real secret sauce of Qlik is the ability to combine all of that data and bring some context in it. So you're not just analyzing the IoT data in isolation, you can combine it with other sorts of data. That's the unique play. And then from there, we can push it out into the rest of the organization, via dashboards and apps and things like that, but with a sense of governance there, and that's governance without suffocation. We have self-service capabilities and the ability to really freeform discover and explore in the data without limitations. And we can do the same experience and push that out beyond the enterprise and the organization by delivering that same experience with governance to the online portals. So that could be not only your external employees out in the field, but also your customers and your partners as well. we're seeing at Qlik that our most successful customers are getting the most value of their IoT data when they start combining their IoT data with other data. They really start to create value and experience that associated difference from the Qlik's engine of actually seeing the associations with their data combined with other data such as production, CRM, ERP data, for example, and web-based sources as well. And that's when it starts to drive innovation. The innovation is data-driven, and organizations are finding innovative new ways of doing businesses by expanding analytics of their IoT data throughout that enterprise, whether it be from self-service capabilities to embedded analytics and putting it into systems that people are used to using. And by getting the right data into the hands of the right people in the right way, they're also starting to really realize the maximum value from their investment of the IoT ecosystem. So let's talk about some of our customer examples. Our customers using Qlik in the IoT space today. Before I do that, we're seeing some typical use cases. So there are probably hundreds and thousands of use cases, but broadly speaking, we can group them up into these three main categories here. The first one is one of improving customer satisfaction. So this is about applying the usage data that you're getting out of the IoT devices or product and establishing how your customers are using the product or service and using that data to then look for further improvements or even confidently advertising that your customers will actually save money or time by using said product. There's also the use case of optimization, and this is really using data to optimize the existing processes and procedures, whether that be infrastructure or predictive maintenance is quite a common and well-known use case. Whether that be using sensors on paint spraying robots on a factory line to not only monitor the quality of the paint, but using that data and other failure analysis data to tell when a particular machine needs maintenance and therefore minimizing downtime. Or even through to measuring soil moisture on a golf course and determining when it's the optimum time to start watering the grass. And then the last one is around innovation. This is about delving deep into the data and discovering insights that can lead to new ways of doing business, or perhaps even monetizing the data itself. In the automotive industry, for example, we have manufacturers like Scania who are analyzing their telematics data from sensors they have in their trucks. And they're using that to, excuse the pun, drive analytics out into their ecosystem and actually start providing insights not just to their end customers, so that's the drivers themselves, but potentially out to their partners and even third parties, such as leasing and motor insurance companies, who can also find insights valuable to their business from that data. Going to the customers themselves, starting off in Italy, we've got BTI Chino. This is an Italian manufacturer of electrical wiring systems and also household automation products such as access controls, thermostats, and even smart meters. So they actually use Qlik internally to create an energy dashboard, and they were monitoring their own energy usage using their own products, their smart meters and switchboards and things like that, across their 9 factories that they had over different locations across Italy. They started combining this data together with production bill of material information, production schedules and the like, and they started to gain insights from this data, and they used this to optimize the processes that they had inside the factory to reduce energy consumption across all of the individual factories. And in total, they realized a savings of 3% per annum across the board of their energy costs. Now they're using Qlik to delve deeper and increase those savings even more to 5 and 10% on an annual basis. And I can only just imagine what would happen if their customers started doing similar practices as well in the total energy savings we could see across Italy and other countries perhaps. Next, jumping over to America, North Carolina, we have a really interesting startup company in North Carolina called Measure.io. Now, their aim is they've been around for a year now, and their aim is to become the leading experts in soil and deliver a really comprehensive and a connected platform for growers, across different parts of their customers. Generally are non-techie, but they certainly know a thing or two about growing things, whether that be from food, agriculture, to turf management on a golf course, say. And what's really neat unique about Measuro here that I like is they've actually designed and built their IoT ecosystem from the ground up. So they built it on Amazon and Cloudera and Kafka and Hadoop and all those good services. They've even built their own sensors and their own IoT platform to plug this into. They can plug in third-party sensors into as well. But they use Qlik as the front end to surface all of this data directly to their end customers, the growers, and deliver the information they need at their fingertips using that associative experience. And what's really, what's a nice quote here we got here is that Qlik actually helped Measure make instant changes while they were in front of the customer during that whole development cycle. As that actually meant they went to market a lot quicker and accelerated their go-to-market. And there's a great quote there from Mike Prorock, who's the CTO of Measure, and said that simply would not be possible without QlikSense. There's also a really great example in the use case of turf management on golf courses, where their sensors are plugged into the ground. They're called bulbs, and they can actually inform when areas are dry. They measure soil moisture, humidity, ground temperature, location, and all this kind of stuff. And they can inform when areas need watering and when they don't. And Measure's gone a step further and actually be able to integrate and plug into irrigation systems, for example, and start bringing in automated watering based on the soil conditions that are being censored, but also combining it with forecasted weather. So, actually, if it's raining and the sprinklers are on, you can turn them off. But likewise, if the ground is quite dry and it's due to be watered and the sprinklers are going to come on, but rain is forecast soon, then you can save water there. And they've already started to see up to 35% savings in water consumption. So that's really important, particularly for those courses that are located in arid conditions and where water is regulated and cost and fines are in play. Now, Mike was also at Connections, and he did a great demo. There is a video online on Qlik Connections if you search that, and his video's in the keynote piece there. But he called out that actually, in addition, Qlik's ability to combine all these multiple data sources, satellite data, pest data, and so on and so forth, Measuro have actually also opened the door to the data scientist community as well in the education and non-profit organizations. They've managed to create an open platform, share that data with that community, and see what comes out of that. And that's, again, something he said just wouldn't be possible without Qlik. So I'm really looking forward to see what else these guys come up with. Shifting over to Germany, changing gears, excuse the pun, in the automation sector, we have a large German automobile manufacturer, and they have now Qlik deeply ingrained across the whole organization in the world of industrial IoT. BMW Group use Qlik to really harness their machine-generated data, whether that be from the paint spraying robots on the factory floor to the connected car on the road, and even the diagnostic data from cars being serviced. They're using advanced analytics on this data, and they're creating new algorithms and fine-tuning existing ones, particularly in the realm of predictive maintenance on the factory line. So they're looking at paint spraying robots. They have 1,600 bodies go through a line a day. The last thing they need is a robot to go down and they can't spray the car bodies. That'd be a massive impact. So they're looking at all kinds of data on the paint spraying robot to start determining when is the best time to down it and service it while keeping the line running. They're also looking at optimizing their business processes to improve not only internal workflows, but also looking at the usage data from the connected car themselves. And there's a good quote here from BMW's group's head of analytics saying that Qlik is playing an essential role to gain the needed insights into future customer value processes. And Harold Kruger, the CEO of BMW Group, says he sees the connected car as an essential element of the Internet of Things and the largest mobile platform, which is a great quote there. And you think about all the sensors that are in a car, I don't think he's far wrong. Coming over to the UK, we've got British Gas. They're part of the Centrica Group. They're actually a 200-year-old company, but they're still innovating today. And they're actually one of the UK's leading energy services businesses in the utilities market. And they are heading out the smart meter rollout in the UK. You may not know this, but there's a government program in effect where every UK household has to be upgraded to a smart meter by the end of this decade. And British Gas are actually using Qlik to surface all that usage data they're getting from well over 3.5 million active smart meters out there now. They're getting 300 million data data points per meter per year, and they're taking readings every 30 minutes from these smart meters. They're combining that with other data such as their CRM data, and they're really starting to get a true value and a profile of their customers. And not stopping there, they're using Qlik to monitor the energy usage, and they've particularly got an innovative free energy day tariff plan, where customers, believe it or not, can actually receive free energy usage on a day of their choice over the weekend between the hours of 9 to 5. So they're like me, when they've got that, they're going to absolutely put all the devices on charge. The washing machine will be on, the tumble dryer, all my electrical devices will be on during those hours, and then I'll turn it off because it's free energy, right? And the British Gas were using Qlik to analyse that data, clear out all the noise, and they could get a really clear picture of their customers when they were burning the energy and the actual costs involved. And in doing so, as you would expect, they saw this change of behaviour where customers are using the energy during this lower cost period. It meant it was lower cost to British Gas, and they could pass that cost from their suppliers onto their customers, and they could confidently advertise that this plan would actually save their customers money. And this is a really highly regulated industry, where fines would be in play otherwise. And they're also looking to the future. They're using this data to pave the way towards more personalised plans in the future. So different plans for whether you're just couples or a family or elderly, all have different energy uses. So just take a little pause there. And a famous writer once said, "A desk is a dangerous place to view the world." And that kind of brings it into context for the next two customer examples we've got here. Hopping over to Japan, we have a top Japanese restaurant, sushi restaurant, in the conveyor belt sushi land called Akindo Sushiaro. What's great about this use case is, or the example, it's about putting data into the hands of restaurant managers. Now they have, Akindo Sushiaro have over 400 restaurants across Japan. They're serving up 1 billion plates of sushi every year. Each plate has its own RFID tag, which in total is generating 4 billions of records on an annual basis. Now, before Akindo Sushiaro put Qlik in, they used Excel, believe it or not, to analyze all of this data. And not surprisingly, they were unable to cope with the volumes and velocity, and that led to them making decisions on out-of-date data and often on gut feel. Come Qlik, and they put that in, they could actually start surfacing that data into real meaningful insights from the time that the plate was put onto the conveyor belt, how long it was on the conveyor belt for, when it was taken off, tie it in with loyalty programs, and they started to see even basic things like what's the most popular plate across all their restaurants, which was actually different to what they thought. And in addition to that, they could share the data across departments such as the marketing department, product development, corporate planning, and they managed to do so in a very quickly in a governed way, and that led to new products coming to market much quicker than before. And actually looking at both popular and unpopular dishes, they also managed to decrease their food wastage as well. And the last customer example I'll tell you back in the UK is Rentokil Initial Group. They're a 90-year-old company, and they're in the business of pest control, and they've managed to turn that around from a very reactive response business to a very new proactive service model. So they have over 20,000 connected devices out there, rodent containment systems, or a connected rat trap, if you like, and that's generating over 3 million data points per year. And they're using Qlik to visualize their fleet of connected devices by location over 12 countries, and they can zoom down into customer estate level and actually see infrastructure detail as well, such as where the trap's located and even the status of it. And they've gone from a customer calling them because they need to come and empty their rat trap, to engineers being alerted on a handheld device that action needs to be taken, where it is, so they're knocking on the door before their clients even know they have an issue. And this is really important for minimizing contamination and smell, which is essential for companies in the food industry, for example. And this actually even goes further into optimization, because while the field technician is there, they can look on that same handheld device and actually see that infrastructure. So they can see where the traps are located, the status and the power levels. They can start making informed decisions while they're on site, such as changing batteries or even relocating existing traps. to a better location where perhaps the Wi-Fi signal is stronger because previously it's been receiving or having a bad signal and losing data. For example, forklift trucks breaking that Wi-Fi signal results in a bad connection and missing data, which no one wants in the IoT world. Just going to leave you with a question before we jump into some demos here is, how data-driven is your organization today? A key theme when we look at all of these examples is the ability to push analytics and insights across the whole organization. So by getting the right information to the right people in a way that they're used to working in and a format that's understandable and makes sense to them, then organizations like yourself can start to grow into a data-driven culture. So it's not just about providing the insights into the head office, it's about pushing it across departments, maybe even regions, and then all the way out into the field, into the hands of the people that need it most. So by delivering role-specific apps or dashboards and through data governance, but without that suffocation, this really allows for the complexity to be reduced and also scale appropriately as your user population increases, whether that's through adoption of using the new apps or even just general growth. With that, I'd like to take a pause and hand it over to my colleague John Toot for a quick demo of seeing Qlik in action. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Adam. Just loading the screen now. Give me 1 second. So, as Adam mentioned, we're starting to see IoT data everywhere, including in the beekeeping industry. So one of the things that I do on the side is I'm a beekeeper, and I have created an IoT device that sits on the side of a beehive, and it'll collect temperature, humidity, weight, and the battery level. It sends this data out over 3G, and I collect it using AWS for the back end. And then I pull that data in the Qlik sense, and it allows me this really interactive platform to be able to learn more about what's going on inside these beehives, with the kind of end goal to, number one, identify what's leading towards the death of a hive, and number two, identify the periods where the honey flow begins and I need to add more equipment, more boxes onto the hives. So on the screen here, you can see I have a map of where I have various different hives, and I kind of color code based on the change in weight throughout the day. So we can see here there's a 0.16 change in that particular hive today. So that means that the weight's starting to already go up. I can kind of get an idea of all the different stats for a group of hives, or I can just click on one like that. And now just focusing on that one hive, I can kind of see the weight over time. I can change that really quickly, and maybe I want to see the battery over time. So right now, Qlik is rolling everything up to the month level, but if I wanted to see inside that month, I can just click it, and it rolls it into that month, into the details of each day. Same thing with it in each day. If I wanted to see the latest and greatest data as of right now, I click on today's date, and here we are. So there's a sudden drop, I don't know why, that happened right here in one of the most latest data points. Maybe that's something I need to go check out. So it allows me to kind of find these things very easily, these data points that stick out like that. I can clear my filter and get back to the beginning point. And maybe I want to go to a different page that has different analytics. So I'm going to go to this weight analysis page. And this has different objects. This one is a box plot down here that kind of shows me the distribution of the weight throughout time, right? And again, I can click on one particular month and see the different days. And this whole population is within this data set, but again, I can always focus in on a group of hives that I want information on that. So it gives me a lot of really, really important, useful information as a beekeeper. I can see the distribution, I can see when things are going up and down, and it really gives me insights into when I need to interact with them and go out there and check them out. versus when I should just leave them alone, let them do their thing. So there's tons to be learned within this particular application, and I'm going to push that. There we go. I'll stop the demo now. But what's really important is identifying these big differences, the changes, right? And there's a lot of noise within all this data. So it's important to be able to find these large spikes and focus in on it, and then pull that information out and kind of learn from that information. So I'll pass it back to Adam. Adam, if you want to take it.
Thanks very much, John. I think we've got about 5 more minutes or so, so I've got a couple more demos that I'll show, so I'll just quickly share my screen. Hopefully Bill won't tell us off, but what I want to show you is 2 different applications here. The first one is you're seeing Qlik Sense here in the hub, and you can see all the applications that I've got here on my desktop. This is on my local computer. I want to show you the art of the possible in terms of tracking footfall data in this case, an imaginary mall. So it's based on real use case, but the data has been changed just for the purposes of public demo. But you can see here a typical sort of dashboard here. It's showing the average connected Wi-Fi devices. This is actually tracking MAC addresses. So if you've got an infrastructure where you're delivering public Wi-Fi and you just need to turn on the ability of tracking or logging MAC addresses, you can do a similar sort of thing to this. And the use case we're using here is when malls can use analytics to optimize layouts and store locations based on footfall, push particular promotions to customers based on their location, as well as looking at traditional advertising boards, whether it's printed or digital, and the best areas to put that in. And in this dashboard, in this app, sorry, you can see we've got business data in terms of total revenue generated by the mall, as well as facility management and operational data, for example. Very similar to what John showed you here. This sheet is showing a KPI measurements. There's a scatter plot here where we can look at dwell time based on people who spend the longest in the mall versus how much they spend. And in this particular case, let's just imagine we've got a loyalty program where we managed to pick up the nationality in there. So if I just quickly expand this visualization, which you can do on all the Qlik stuff, you can start seeing information there. And if you wanted to, as John suggested, we can have a look at people who spend a lot of time, or those nationalities that are spending more time in the mall and actually spending a fair amount of money there. And you can start seeing that the rest of the visualizations are flexing and changing. Clear that. Other insights that you can gain, looking at this particular chart type, you can see revenue versus country and the product categories. So if I was interested in which nationalities are picking up or spending most on spirits and wines, I can see that. And conversely, looking at a particular country, what's their sort of preference to buy there. But what I really want to show you in this app is our geoanalytical capabilities. So John sort of showed that in the mapping capabilities. This is beyond not just mapping capabilities, there's also a geospatial analytical piece in here as well. So we can do certain things like tracking through the MAC address in this particular case, using triangulation of the Wi-Fi points and the beacons that are around. We can start seeing typical footfall throughout the mall in a 24-hour period, say. Our imaginary malls opened all day. And as it starts cycling through, you can see all the other different charts flexing and getting more insights there. So you can see sort of the peaks and troughs in your data there. I'll just deselect that. One thing I do want to sort of point out is you can start going into granular detail. So I'm just going to pick a radius of some particular point that I'm interested in on this particular floor. I'll go to the next sheet, And here I get a different type of visualization. This is showing me the number of people that spend more than 5 minutes in a particular place. That's designated by the size of the circle, and then the path from A to B that also taken from those places. And the thicker the line, that represents more people. So if I just zoom in a little bit, in the case of display board advertising, let's say for the sake of argument, I've got a board here, I can see that I'm not getting as many eyes on it, perhaps as if I moved it into one of these areas here where there's a much higher footfall, for example. One last quick thing I just want to show with geoanalytics is I'll just use the bookmark capability for this. So here you can see there's some pre-selected bookmarks that I've made when I want to keep going back and revisiting the data, particularly when it changes. And what's neat about this is not only does it remember all my selections, it takes me to a different sheet as well. And here is a slightly different visualization. This is a use case here of I've just narrowed down on 3 particular MAC addresses, so you can really go down to individual level, and you can see by color coding each one, and there's quite erratic behavior on one. There could be 2 scenarios here I could imagine. One could be maybe I need to look at improving my signage, because people aren't finding what they need, and therefore they can't find what they need, they give up, they go home, that's lost revenue, and we don't want that. Another one could be actually using the location data to then push relevant promos to them. So if the particular person is standing in front of their favorite shoe store or a food shop, for example, and there's a promotion on, you can push that through the loyalty program, just for example. So that's geoanalytics. A bit was through there. I'm very conscious of time. I just really wanted to show you one more here. This is Measure. It's a demo platform, and we talked about them as a use case. But what's really cool about this side of things, I just want to show you is that although it looks completely different to Qlik, it's actually using Qlik at the heart. The Qlik's engine is used embedded into Measure's platform here, and they're using it to surface all kinds of data here. So you can see external weather data being brought in. You can see a satellite visualization. This is actually their own farm, so this is their test bed they've kindly let us have. You can see things overlaid such as the USDA soil survey, so that's particularly important if they wanted to expand and move, they could see what type of land they've got and plan accordingly around them. If I turn that off, there's also the false color infrared piece here, and you may or may not know, but the USDA flying plays over on a regular basis, captures this kind of information, and it's really critical information to growers so they can see, for golf course management, cities planning parks, or even farmers for just seeing where their trouble spots are. And one thing that is quite neat here is you get the associative experience there. If I've selected a couple of sensors there, you can see that the whole information changes there. I'll just make it bigger so you can actually see what we're looking at: surface humidity, soil moisture, service temperature. And if I actually activate one of them, you can actually start seeing real-time information coming in off the sensor as well, where we can actually see humidity on this graph. So this is actually tracking cloud cover, humidity and temperature in actuals. You can see in the grey lines and the yellow and the blue lines, and the dotted lines are actually forecasts. So we're starting to bring in sort of predictive information as well as real-time information. And again, this is using the sort of Qlik engine. As I'm zooming in here just to get a bit more granular detail, you can start seeing it changes from date information to time information, and we can start monitoring real-time data coming in off the sensors as well. And that's particularly useful for plugging it into irrigation systems, as I mentioned earlier. So that's a bit of a whirlwind tour. I'm very conscious of time, so with that, I'll just hand it over to the last slide. And just wanted to say, really, you've seen and heard about Qlik, but you can really experience it for yourself. We have a demo areas. There's some fun demos and business type demos. You can go on demo.qlik.com to have a play with. You can even experience Qlik yourself. There's a free desktop download for Windows, or you can log on to cloud and create your own cloud account that's managed by Qlik. Completely free, completely unlimited. Obviously, you don't get the full enterprise experience with governance, what have you, but it's a good sort of try before you buy kind of experience. And not forgetting the Qlik community that's joined by over 100,000 of Qlik peers made up of customers, Qlik enthusiasts, and even Qlik employees like John and myself. So with that, I'll thank you for your time, and I'll hand it over to Bill to wrap up, and if we've got any questions.
Well, Adam, John, thank you so much for that excellent presentation. We'll get started with today's QA, and I want to thank the audience for their participation. We've had a lot of questions that have come in during the presentation, so we'll do our best to get through as many of them as possible in the time remaining. And during this QA session, I'll leave up this screen with contact information for Adam and John if you'd like to contact them following today's webinar. So let's get started. Adam, John, one of the things that you talked about so much in the early part of your presentation was the huge volume of data that is and will be coming through IoT devices. And as we know, a lot of that isn't valuable. Some sources describe it as garbage. How do I find the important information out of that huge stream of data?
Thanks, Bill. I'll take this one. Yeah, it's a really good question, and there's a couple different techniques you can do, but thankfully, Qlik kind of gives you the options on how you want to find this important data. One technique that I utilize is to use the load engine as you're bringing data. Everything that you interact with within Qlik is in memory. So it's separated from the source. So as you bring it in from the source into memory, you can change data, you can add data, or you can look for data. In my case, I'm actually looking for the deltas, the difference between the last data point and the current data point. And if that delta is really high, then it will automatically call that out. It'll highlight it, and I'll see it on the charts very clearly. Some of the other techniques are to use some of those distribution charts or the histogram or various other visual ways to show where those outliers live. And then you can focus in on them. But yeah, with Qlik, you have a lot of options, even with the big data. And where you have just massive amounts. I'm dealing with one client where they have over 500 columns from each sensor array. And they're trying to bring all that into memory. But there's a much better way to do that where you can kind of look for these outliers and then bring in the detailed data of just the detail you want to focus in on. And we call that application on demand, where you're dynamically generating an application with the detailed data that you want rather than everything. So there's a couple different ways to approach that.
Well, John, thanks so much for that answer. Many times we're going to want to use predictive analytics to create a particular signal for action or a flag of some sort. Does Qlik have built-in predictive analytics, or how would I go about importing, say, R into Qlik, or can I do that?
Absolutely.
Sure,
This is Adam.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Adam.
Well, I'll start off, and maybe you can finish if I leave anything out. But yeah, recently we've announced support for via integration, so we don't necessarily have it built into the product per se. There's a couple of kind of what-if analysis you can do, but more importantly, we have integrations into those kind of machine learning and decision engines such as R and Python, and other things. We have these really flexible open APIs and strong documentation with that, and that's where you can really start pushing using Qlik to surface the data in R and push things back in to be calculated and back out into Qlik at lightning speed. And that's really where you get the most, as John was saying, the most important experience. It's that real associative difference through the Qlik's engine of seeing that information in context, and even the information that you've left behind as well. That's why we say you can see the whole story in your data when we talk about the sort of secret source of Qlik, if you like. John, do you want anything to add on that?
No, I'll just add that there are also a ton of statistical functions built into Qlik, very similar to the way you would use Excel functions to do statistical work in expressions. Same thing in Qlik. You can call those functions to do the hardcore math. Or as Adam said, you can kind of push that out to another server to do that work and then have Qlik just visualize it.
Well, Adam, John, thank you for those great answers to some very good questions. We didn't have a whole lot of time to reserve for QA today, but for those of you that asked questions that weren't answered today, We'll be sending all the unanswered questions to Adam, John, and the Qlik team so they can follow up with you after today's webinar. I have just a few quick announcements. If you would please mark your calendars for July 18th, that's our next DSC webinar, which will be self-service machine learning to be presented by SciSense. Also remember that today's taping will be available for on-demand viewing later today and can be found on the homepage of Data Science Central in the Webinar tab located at the top of the page. Well, this brings today's webinar to a close. I'd like to thank our audience for their attendance and thoughtful questions, and a special thanks again to Qlik for their sponsorship and our speakers today, Adam Mayer and John Toot, for their insight into today's topic. My name is Bill Vorhies. I'm very pleased to have been your host for today's event. I look forward to seeing you all again on July 18th. Have a great day.